First off, may I invite South Africa's Minister of Finance to just share his thoughts on the subject of leveraging international financial infrastructure for sustainable development, after which I will call on Honorable or Professor Paul Romer. Also, let me introduce to you the President of the New Development Bank, who will also share his thoughts with us when we have a panel discussion. Is that all in order? You're a very, very quiet crowd. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Program Director. That's what we call it in South Africa. President Kamath, once again, thank you. I said a few things in the morning. I think that's what got me into a bit of trouble. About the relationship between the New Development Bank and South Africa, and indicated, as you might recall, that looking at South Africa in isolation from Southern Africa doesn't make sense. And therefore, we should see the interaction between the New Development Bank and South Africa in the Southern African context. And during the course of the Board of Governors meeting, I made reference to a highway that starts from just about here, which is the N1 north, and which goes all the way to the Bight Bridge, which is the borderline between South Africa and Zimbabwe.
Let me begin by asking the Honorable Minister from the People's Republic of China to just share his thoughts on the topic, leveraging international finance infrastructure for social development. We know that China is now the second largest economy in the world. You have spent trillions over the last few decades in public infrastructure, and it's made a fundamental change, not just for China, but for the Asian region, and in fact, even for many countries in Africa. It's been a catalyst for so much more investment. Could you just share your thoughts on what matters most when you're leveraging international finance?
好的，谢谢主持人，也谢谢呢保罗教授刚才给我们的讲解。应当说，从保罗教授刚才给我们讲解的一些情况当中呢，我们应当说受到很多的启发。中国呢，应当说在这个基础设施的建设，还有金融机构的作用的发挥这个方面呢，还是积累了一些经验，推动了我们国家经济和社会的不断的向前发展。这一次研讨会呢，这个主要的呢还是聚焦如何发挥新开发银行等等多边开发银行的作用这个方面。所以呢，我想呢，从中国经济发展过程当中。
Thank you very much. Paul Romer, I'd like to just bring you in here because we've heard quite comprehensively what China has done, what its commitments are, and what it's passionate about. The truth of the matter, though, is that the China of today is experiencing slowed economic growth, well, slow by Chinese standards, and there are many concerns about how all of this mobilization of state capital has led to debts in China, and there are just concerns what reverberations that will have for the global economy. Is that something to worry about when there's too much mobilization of capital into infrastructure?
I just don't worry about how things are going to turn out in China. I've never found these alarms about huge crisis plausible, and we haven't seen huge crisis. The slowing growth is part of the inevitable catching up process. It's only slowing relative to extremely high early rates. So I think China's the least worrisome part of the global economic system right now. And I must say as well that China did an extraordinarily good job of welcoming huge numbers, hundreds of millions of people into urban life, and did it without slums. So I'll make an offer. If you can get me the data on how much the land under Shenzhen is worth, I'll stop citing Singapore as this great development success, and I'll start citing Shenzhen, because Shenzhen was much quicker. It only took 20 years.
Denominated assets. Think about moving into yuan and renminbi. How much of a thought is that within the NDB?
I think it's a major focus for the bank. The constraints I will first articulate and then say where we can work with. Constraint is that we do not want to actually raise local currency where we see that that itself is a constraint in that economy. So we don't want to basically crowd out other potential borrowers. So our focus, we believe, by getting into the local currency market, we will deepen the market. We will be a quality paper issuer in that market, given the rating that we have. And C, to the extent that we are then able to raise the money and offer it to our members, we de-risk them, particularly from the exchange fluctuations, because the key challenge that most emerging markets face is the exchange risk, which works adversely over a long period of the loan. When you talk of a 15-year loan or so. So by looking at local currency, we will obviate all these challenges. But we will need to work within the market size so that we don't crowd out other investors. So I think our own policy, our own approach going forward will be, it will be a blend of local currency and hard borrowings from the markets.
Let's get a perspective now from India and the Honorable Subhash Chandra Garg. Your views, given the topic we have here and the example of what India is doing to leverage international finance, but also to support social development.
Thank you. I think we are discussing how the international financial architecture or the markets can be leveraged for financing infrastructure and sustainable development. Obviously, what has not been said is for the members of the NDB. That is what you are intending to do. I think there are certain facts which we should remember. One, the need for the finance in the member countries for financing growth and sustainable development is enormous. Even for China, still there is a lot of need for the capital to finance its development. India, South Africa, and the two other countries need also enormous amount of resources for financing.
Brazil, let's talk about what's happening in Brazil. Honorable Minister Marcos Troio, and your views on leveraging the international financial infrastructure.
Thank you very much. Well, I was very much taken by the exchange of words that was proposed by Professor Romer earlier in his talk when he was asking whether government is part of the solution or part of the problem. And I think the Brazilian case offers a very good example of how this question should be approached, because if the 500 people that are in this room here today traveled with me on a time machine back 50 years ago, we were in 1969, we would not be discussing China, we would be discussing Brazil. Because Brazil, along with Japan, was the country that grew the most in the world in the 20th century. The projection was, if there is one country to challenge economic supremacy by the US in the 21st century, that could probably be Brazil. So it was all about Brazil. Was this because of government or because of the lack of government? Well, as many of you know, up until the half of the 20th century, Brazil was essentially an exporter of raw materials, of commodities. Then it embarked on a very ambitious process of industrialization.
Perspective from Russia, please. Honorable Minister Sergei Storchak, your views on how to leverage international financial infrastructure and what's happening in Russia.
Well, first of all, let me refer to some aspects of our lecture. I hope that Professor Roma wouldn't be surprised that when I say that when we start negotiating the setting up these institutions, we never discussed it in terms of arbitrage. Never. I don't know why it happened, but it's really, we never rely on such kind of approach to setting up this institution. Even on this stage of feasibility study, we use another argument and counter-arguments for or against setting up this institution. We slightly relied on the philosophy of leveraging when we negotiated this bank. But we fully rely on what you call financial diplomacy. It was really a big job in terms of negotiating. So why am I speaking about this? For simple reason, what is standing behind these institutions is tough, serious political judgments about recent governments of global economy.
The Honorable Majoro, you're from Lesotho.
Correct.
And there was a time when Lesotho was regarded as one of the poorest nations in the world. And now you've turned the corner. You don't occupy that place anymore. What is the thing that allowed Lesotho to move from that country that the international community pitied to a country where people say, actually, we can do business in there?
Well, it's actually very interesting that this tiny piece of land completely in South Africa will attract some people. We are a very quiet corner of the continent, but we do get a fair share of people coming in to find out what's happening up the mountain. So, but let me just take a few seconds here to share with you some boring detail. I used to sit on the board of the IMF, and one of the most difficult things was for the BRICS to secure a fair share of voice on that board. And the same with the bank. So a few years ago when the new development bank was mooted, Lesotho and several other countries thought, okay, we can understand an alternative MDB, but it is so exclusive that it's going to be the same business as usual, excluding others and the four banks. But here's something very interesting.
Please can we thank our panel from the furthest end, Professor Paul Romer, seated next to him, Hong Sai-Tsu. Hong Sai-Tsu, the Assistant Minister of Finance for the People's Republic of China. KV Kamat, the President of the New Development Bank. Ndate Mwekezi Majoro, the Minister of Finance for Lesotho. I missed you, I'm sorry, Sergei Storchak, Deputy Minister of Finance, Russia. Marcus Troyer, Deputy Minister of Foreign Trade and International Affairs, Brazil. And Subhash Chandra Garg, who's the Finance Secretary in the Ministry of Finance, India. Gentlemen, thank you for your time and thank you for your attention.